the straight goods rather than the manufactured consent that we get from the mainstream media. He's an award-winning documentary filmmaker, and he's a fantastic advocate for liberty. Give it up for Dan Dix.
Thank you, Tim. All right, it is good to be back at the Railroad Club, kind of. If any of you guys were here, I don't know if it was last time. I know you were here, Dan, when we were here, and in the beginning of this talk, Tim talked a little bit about a guy named Augustus Invictus, and there was a time when he was supposed to be speaking at this particular event, and a whole bunch of people who thought that he was a white nationalist decided to show up here and protest his talk. This is, of course, the anti-fascist Antifa people, and some of you may remember we had our good friend Lauren Southern show up, and outside, right out front here, we ended up getting into a little bit of a debate with a few feminists. And Lauren ended up making the controversial statement that there are only two genders. And then all of a sudden, we were essentially attacked. Dan, you had to help us fend some of these people off. And they ended up dumping a bottle of what seemed to be water mixed with urine all over Lauren Southern, and it was disgusting. And I remember thinking at the time, and this is what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, is this problem we're having right now with identity politics, where these people seem that it's like they're being attacked personally when you try to just question somebody's ideology, or you just want to talk to them about their beliefs. They all of a sudden think they're being personally attacked. And I want to give you a few examples of where they're going after attacking free speech, but also where free speech is thriving. So in a sense, it's not really dissipating, it's just being diverted into other areas. One of those areas is in this idea of Islamophobia. And I started making videos about that, I don't know, maybe about a year ago, whenever Bill M103 came out. And all of a sudden, I was being referred to as a white nationalist, as a Nazi, just for simply trying to question Islam's compatibility with our Western Christian fundamental values that we have here. I was immediately branded a white supremacist, and I think some of these guys, were exposed at an event that came up not too long after. This is actually only a couple of months ago. I'll give you an example of how some of these people try to silence our free speech. So, as you know, in the United States, there was a lot of people protesting the coming down of these Confederate statues. And there were some people here in Vancouver who wanted to hold a little rally in support of that. And this is about 12 or 13 people who wanted to show up. And the bigger story ended up being the fact that around 3,000 to 4,000 counter-protesters showed up to this event to try to shut it down. Now, I should mention, before I went to this event, I had somebody tell me that, Dan, I've seen on message chat boards that members of some anti-racist groups and Antifa groups are planning to, quote, punch you in the face and smash your camera equipment if they see you at this rally. So I figured, I'm still going to go. I'm not going to let them intimidate me, but I'm going to go. I'm going to check it out and see what this is all about. Now, as soon as we got into this rally, there was a lady giving a talk up on the microphone. She was a native lady, and she started talking a great deal about how the white man had destroyed them, and the white man had raped her entire family, in fact, and she was going on and on about that. And at one point, I made the comment that this sounds a little bit racist to me. She sounds like she's being racist at an anti-racist rally that seemed to be preaching love and no hate. And all of a sudden, I was surrounded by a whole bunch of these anti-fascist people who started chanting, "Nazi go home, Nazi go home, racist not welcome here," and simply for questioning what this lady was saying. And all of a sudden, I was surrounded. And I was actually filming live at the time. And again, it came down to them not being able to handle the debate. I think what we're getting in the mindset of these, the Marxist ideology we're seeing in these students is the fact that they're being told that there was a time when the bourgeoisie, the proletariat overtook the bourgeoisie because, they had an unfair advantage. So therefore, because you're black, the system was built to be against you, and that's why you're not successful. Or because you're a woman, the system was built to be against you, that's why you're not successful. And I think that's ridiculous because in Canada, it's relatively a free country here. I mean, you can develop a craft, you can become an entrepreneur, you can do what you want. So that's really no excuse. Now, what these people end up doing when they can't win the debate is they'll sometimes resort to violence. We saw that with Lauren Southern. I don't know if that can be considered violence, but what happened to me, I don't know if it could be considered violence either, but I kind of do. Here's what happened. When I got there, there was, these guys dressed in black, the Antifa guys who were staring me down, who finally pinpointed me. I knew there were some guys planning to punch me and stuff like that. And after the whole crowd was shouting at me and pointing at me, there was a beach ball bouncing around in this crowd, right? Like you see at a rock concert or something, a beach ball just floating around. And it ended up landing into the hands of these guys that were staring me down, all dressed up in black. And they hauled off with like a curveball type, threw it right in my face, and it hit me in the face. My glasses went flying off. My ears are ringing from the noise. And it was a deliberate act of aggression. Now, as I said, they used beach balls and bottles of water to just kind of fluff it off like it was nothing. But that was clearly an act of aggression against me. But the beautiful thing about these things, when these things happen, like with Lauren Southern, or with these guys throwing this beach ball in my face, is it always ends up blowing up in their face afterwards. A whole bunch of articles came out about that incident that went viral. Some of them had 500,000 views, some of them hundreds of thousands of views. Talking about me, talking about that this guy is going against Islam and this is what happened to him. And all of a sudden it brought a lot of attention to the cause. So perhaps it's backfiring on them. When they try to silence us, it only makes our message louder. And another example of this that I experience all the time, not just here in Canada, but internationally. How many people are familiar with the Bilderberg group? Okay, pretty much everybody's heard about them. Well, I've been covering Bilderberg for over 10 years now, and a few years ago, they have gotten to the point where it seems that I'm starting to get recognized at this particular event. I was arrested in Copenhagen, Denmark, when I was covering the Bilderberg group there, and trumped up. It was they tried to get me on false drug charges. But again, they tried to, in fact, I also got detained there. And the good news about what came out of that one, again, is that all of a sudden word got out on the internet that myself and my friend Luke Radowski had been thrown in jail in Copenhagen for trying to investigate Bilderberg. And the hashtag #FreeDicks got big on Twitter. And then all of a sudden, their phones were ringing off the hook, and the cops on the inside of the room were getting call after call after call, and I think they started to think, who the heck are these guys in here? And they let us out. We ended up only being held for about 4 or 5 hours, and we were let off scot-free. So, again, this thing completely backfired on them. The following year, I went to Germany to cover Bilderberg. And then in that instance, I ended up getting detained by the police about 8 times in a period of 24 hours. They actually had me pegged. They said, we have been told that anytime we see your face, we've been instructed to stop you and ask you for identification. And at one point they said I can't come in within 100 meters of the actual building that I flew halfway across the world to cover this event. So I was about to take that. I wasn't going to just say, no, I'm not going to cover this. So I continued to do so. And one of those police officers actually tried to sue me for putting out a YouTube video of a conversation that I had with him. And I found out that in Germany, you don't actually have to, you can be both private and public at the same time. So it turns out this police officer was going to be suing me, not as the German police. He was going to be suing me as a private citizen. Even though he was donning the uniform, he was still going to be suing me as a private citizen. But I got a message from YouTube saying if you don't take down the video, you know, your channel will get a strike, and that would be devastating for me. But I looked into it and I found out that YouTube offers a blur feature where you can blur out the person's face after the fact. So I actually didn't have to take the video down. I ended up blurring out the guy's face, but the video stayed up. You know, the message stayed out there. And what ended up happening in that instance is it ended up bringing more attention to my cause. Again, so when they try to silence us like this, it just ends up building us up and making us bigger. So I guess in a nutshell, I mean, what ended up happening was things got a little bit more better for me on the YouTube end, but then we had to deal with the YouTube adpocalypse. Now, have you guys heard of this? This is where they're kind of pulling advertising revenues from YouTube content creators who are producing controversial content, which I guess I am, and my channel's being heavily demonetized. But again, the free market spoke. Free market solutions presented themselves. And all of a sudden, a couple of decentralized video sharing platforms presented themselves. One of them was called Steemit, steemit.com, STEEMIT.com. And another one that ended up spawning from the Steemit blockchain is a site called DTube. And I started posting my videos there. And about a year ago, I started posting to Steemit. And all of a sudden, I started making more money off of Steemit than I was on the YouTube ad revenues. My first post on Steemit, I just said, "Hello, my name's Dan. Thanks for having me here in the Steemit community." And it made $1,700 in one day. Oh. And I was just like, whoa, what is this? But this would not have come if it weren't for them trying to silence our voices online through the YouTube adpocalypse. And because that happened, now we have Steemit, now we have DTube, now we have these decentralized systems, and guys like me are able to supplement our income off of what we lost off of YouTube. So, you know, no matter what they try to do, they, you know, pushing this all the way back to the Islamophobia thing, which, as Victor was pointing out, is a nonsensical term. What did it do? It brought more attention to the cause, essentially. Same with the Lauren Southern event. Same with going to Bilderberg and being arrested. That just brought massive attention to my cause. And then now with the YouTube adpocalypse, I just see that free speech, yes, is being messed with. They're trying to suppress some of our voices and our ability to get our messages out there, but the free market is responding, and that to me is a beautiful thing, to know that, you know, freedom always prevails. So yes, they're going to continue to try to silence us. Yes, they're going to try to continue to silence voices like ours. But it is so exciting to see these new solutions popping up all the time. And I have found cryptocurrencies, surprisingly enough, to be a really good avenue for me to be able to continue my my free speech. So that kind of in a nutshell is what I wanted to talk about. Just the fact that, yes, it does seem like our speech right now is being messed with, but I'm getting the sense that it's not disappearing entirely. In fact, it's just being diverted into other channels. And if we can focus on some of these channels and focus our energies on that a little bit more, such as I'm starting to do with Steemit and DTube, I think we have a real good chance, real good chance to grow this thing and to take take it back, essentially, our freedoms that they are trying to take from us. So we can't let identity politics play this victimhood game where they think that we are directly attacking them personally. That's not the case, but that's how a lot of these lefties want to see it, and then they go on the attack. But as I said, it only really, I don't know what movie it was, I think Star Wars, where they said, what's the cliche line, strike me down and I'll only ever become bigger than you ever could have imagined, or something like that. That's what's happening to the freedom movement, or the truth movement, whatever you want to call it. There are forces behind the scenes that are trying to silence certain voices, but I do think that it is backfiring to an extent. So I guess on that note, I just wanted to close to let you know there is hope, and especially with the decentralized platforms coming out, specifically DTube. I'm really excited about that one. So that's it in a nutshell, guys. If you, I'll take some questions, and I guess Tim's got something.
Well, I'll start the questioning off. I have a question for you. So we're seeing now lots of crying out, I guess, about censorship on platforms like YouTube and Facebook, terms like Zucked being used and that sort of thing. Now, I have a feeling Walter's solution is, or take on this is that while that's private property, they can do what they want and they can have their own rules and kick you off and control your speech on their property. And there has been a call lately by some people on the right. I see Ezra Levant from Rebel Media making noise about this and different things, to use things like antitrust law to break up these big, because they've become so big that they're almost like, they're saying like almost quasi-public goods in a sense. What is your take on it? You talked about market solution, but is there, what do you think of the noise being made in certain right-wing circles that we ought to maybe bring some kind of government solution to bear, maybe antitrust or something like that?
I think it should be left completely open and free for anybody to be able to get involved and take part in this. No, I don't think it should be silenced, essentially, anyone in the YouTube community. In fact, I'm still on YouTube. I still do put a lot of time and effort into YouTube, mainly because I don't want to just be preaching to the choir. And what we have to be careful about moving off of these platforms is the possibility that we may move into somewhere where we're just going to be preaching to the choir in an ideological echo chamber. And we are trying to reach the masses who have never heard of these sorts of things. So that's important, is to stay within there, because YouTube's where the people are. If we want to reach the sheeple, the people who need to hear this information, you got to go to where the people are. So let's leave that open. And let's just have options, though, other options. And hey, in a true free market, it'll fail. It'll eventually fail on its own. We don't need regulations and the government to come in to put any restrictions on them. Let them fail on its own. Let people just organically move on over to DTube.
Awesome. So before we move on